Welcome to WJ Live, where we equip listeners with the truth. My name is Michael Austin, and I'm a staff writer for the Western Journal. Today I'll be joined by George Upper, Floyd Brown, and Josh Manning as we talk about the latest BLM arrests that could further prove their dishonesty, Dinesh D'Souza's new movie, Trump Card, and we have a special interview with Dinesh D'Souza himself.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome to WJ Live, and today we've got a full show for you. I'm going to be asking some questions today about a guy you may or may not have heard of, and you may or may not have heard of his real name. The media is mostly calling him Sir Major Page, which apparently is what he likes to be called, and who wouldn't. His actual name is Tyree Conyers Page. I may make you guys call me Sir Major. I think that's got legs.
Your ego that big?
Oh,
I mean, this guy must have a
bigger.
mammoth ego
much
to run
bigger.
around and call himself Sir Major. I'm Sir Major.
I may want to be Sir Colonel Page. I'm going to have to.
We have other names.
I'm Sir
you.
General,
I'm
everybody.
Sure you do.
Sir General. You're Sir Owner. Whatever you want to be.
Tyree Conyers Page, who I think I'll just call Page for simplicity's sake, is a leader of an organization called Black Lives Matter of Greater Atlanta, Inc. He took in, according to the FBI, almost $500,000 in donations over the summer and has now been indicted on wire fraud and money laundering charges. According to the FBI, I'm going to quote from a statement from them, all of this money was transferred from the social media donations to the bank account titled and operated in the name of Black Lives Matter of Greater Atlanta, Inc., owned and operated by Page. Now, Page has allegedly spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on personal purchases, clothes, at least 3 firearms, which I find highly ironic. And Page responded to a number of messages on his Facebook account back in June, insisting that the funds had been donated to be used in the fight for George Floyd. I don't know what that means. I don't know what they needed money for.
The fight for
that.
George Floyd,
That's
who's already deceased.
That is, according to the FBI, what he said. And all of this, none of the funds have been used for personal items, all movement related. I do want to point out one thing. Black Lives Matter of Greater Atlanta, Inc., owned and operated by Page, was never recognized by the actual Black Lives Matter Atlanta organization. So I just want to make that clear. They never owned him. But nonetheless, this is a guy using their name clearly. You would think that if he's bringing in these hundreds of thousands of dollars, he's doing so on social media. He's being pretty visible about it. You would think they would be aware of it. Certainly,
Yeah, no trademark suit, so it's
exactly.
tacit endorsement.
So right, so. What he has done is not necessarily representative of everybody in the organization, of course, but certainly they had months and months of opportunity to disown this guy or let people know that they were concerned about his activities or whatnot, and none of that apparently happened. So last week, Michael, on this show, you discussed BLM's problems with honesty. So does this new allegation about Mr. Page surprise you at all?
Not at all. I think it's almost to be expected at this point. Black Lives Matter has, last week they lied about Breonna Taylor pretty openly. We have the AG's independent investigation into Breonna Taylor. We know that the police were justified in returning fire on her boyfriend. So they lied about that. Even though the police, there was definitely some misconduct in the George Floyd case, we know that they covered up facts about that. They lied about that. They lied about Michael Brown. These people, they don't really have an affinity for telling the truth. And it all fits within their philosophy of Marxism, which the only equality they really believe in is economic equity. And so taking money from other people, that just fits kind of perfectly within their belief system.
Yeah, and
interesting point.
And narrative is what interests them, not facts. The narrative is what's important. And we were talking in the newsroom earlier today about that. Conservatives tend to be fascinated by facts and tend to sort of fetishize those and iconize those. When the left figured out decades ago, facts aren't especially compelling, or at least they're not as compelling as narrative is, because narrative is naturally easy to understand and to use to gain empathy. And conservatives we're behind in figuring out how to use narrative.
Anybody who calls themselves Sir Major Page has probably just got to be a street thug. And as a street thug who became, I guess, very good at social media, he claimed the front place in the parade, at least in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And it obviously was good business while it lasted. I mean, to take in $500,000 over the course of a couple of months and then blow most of that money on yourself on clothes and firearms and whatever else, jewelry, whatever he bought. And I'm sure the FBI knows every bit of what he bought, because the FBI has been doing something that's really interesting. They have been using stingray technology in these cities, and a lot of people don't understand that. They set up independent cell towers near these riots, and then those cell phone calls are all sucked into those towers, and they are able to then downgrade the encryption on the calls using the Stingray technology created by Harris Company. And so they can listen to all of those phone calls. And they haven't been making a lot of arrests yet, but I'm going to make a prediction. If Donald Trump is elected president, within a week of his reelection, there will be between 1,000 and 2,000, maybe as many as 2,500 arrests of these people that have been involved in illegal activity in these cities. And, I'd like the arrest to happen now, but I think they're kind of waiting until the election happens, because we know Biden doesn't want to arrest them. And then we're going to see a lot more Sir Major Pages in the newspaper as they bring this very corrupt organization down. Marxism is corrupt at its core. If you look at every country that's been taken over by Marxism, what happens? They have a corrupt little group at the top that pillage the country and become fabulously wealthy, as they have in China. And, China, I think, now has almost as many billionaires as the United States.
Yeah.
And it's this little core at the top that gets all of the goodies, and the people down below, they just get screwed.
So, Floyd, you've been around politics and political organizations, cultural movements for a long time. You've seen a lot of these rise and fall, a lot of movers and shakers, become non-entities overnight sometimes. Can an organization that lies to its core supporters, and you got to figure, if he was able to collect $500,000, these are core supporters, right? These are people, show me your checkbook and I'll show you where your heart is, right? So these are core supporters, people actually willing to donate to the cause. Can an organization that lies to its supporters like that last?
As long as it doesn't capture power, it won't last. But if it captures power, a group of thugs like this absolutely can run a country. It only takes about 3% of the population to have a real revolution. And that's what these folks want. They want a non-democratic revolution so that they can, dictate to all of us these equity terms and decide how they're going to split up the pie, with them getting most of it. So in America, I don't think they can, because I don't think they'll be able to grab power. But if somehow they were able to grab power because, Joe Biden was weak, or somebody got into power that damaged our democratic institutions, then you bet they could last. But I don't think it's going to happen.
So, talking about that potential future for the United States where something like that would happen, I think our friend Dinesh D'Souza is considering that possibility, and he's produced a couple of new films. Infidel, which is out in theaters right now.
Great movie. Great
film. You've seen it.
I've seen it. Jim Caviezel, it's the best work I've seen him do.
I haven't seen that yet.
And
so
he's a
good.
great actor.
He is a great
I've got to
actor.
go see that movie.
It was. I put on my mask and bought my tickets, and my wife and I went out and saw it last weekend.
Sell out.
And yeah, it was. It was worth it. It was worth it. It was a great film.
Did you demask once you were in?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
you
good.
can take your mask
All
off
right.
when you're eating, and I'm going to eat popcorn for the entire 2 hours of the film.
I took mine off
Yeah.
as soon as I was past the guard.
Yeah, it was-
but anyway,
It was a great movie.
So Dinesh has two films: Infidel, which is in theaters now, but he
Great
also has Trump Card, which I can say is a great movie because I've seen that. And that is actually available through the Western Journal, through Western Journal Movies. And you can grab it. We did an interview with Dinesh. We caught up with him earlier. We're going to run that. I want to tell you, though, you can get the film, you can get Trump Card at TrumpMovieNow.com. You can get that through WJ Movies at TrumpMovieNow.com. We caught up with Dinesh earlier, had a great interview. Want to share with you what he's thinking about what's going on in the country right now. Dinesh, thank you so much for joining us. Man, we are excited that you're taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us on Western Journal Live. Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about Trump Cards, just starting off?
Well, I like to do the books and the movies as a kind of 1-2 punch. And so a couple of months ago, I published my book called United States of Socialism. And I titled it that because I think that a lot of what we see going on around us are the tactics of the left. Paramilitaries on the street, burning things and harassing people in restaurants, the shenanigans of the deep state. But see, those are the means. And so the question is, what is the end? What is the goal? Where does the left want to take us? Well, I think where they want to take us is the United States of socialism. But it's important to remember that it's not kind of the classic Marxian socialism. This is a peculiar hybrid of socialism that they have in mind. And that's where they're going. So the movie kind of picks up that thread, exposes the new socialism, kind of shows who's behind it, what their agenda is. And then it pivots to how do we defeat it. It focuses on Trump as kind of the political warrior in this battle, and that's why I call the movie Trump Card.
Yeah, so Dinesh, you've made several films over the past decade, not all of them even documentaries. You just produced Infidel, starring Jim Caviezel, which was met with really great audience scores on Rotten Tomatoes and even generally positive critic scores, which is a pretty big accomplishment for a conservative movie, considering critics are majority left-leaning. Do you think that more conservatives should be getting into filmmaking? Because this seems like the cultural battleground that we as conservatives seem to be losing at.
Absolutely. If we don't recover some of the ground we've lost in academia and the media and the entertainment world, notably Hollywood, then long term, I think our prospects are very grim. The reason it's hard to do is because if you're on the left, the studios make it really easy. If you're Michael Moore or Oliver Stone, you go to a studio, you go, here's my idea. They go, here's $10 million, go make a movie. And then once the movie is made, they book you on The View, The Today Show, Bill Maher, the comedy shows. So we have none of that. We have to sort of do it all, from raising the money to making the movie. And a lot of conservatives and Christians try to make niche movies, Christian movies and niche conservative movies. We tried very hard with Infidel not to do that. And we took a lot of risk. So the movie is very gritty. It's got some rough language, extreme violence. It's R-rated. But the idea was to make a mainstream movie about Islamic terrorism and have it be and talk the way the terrorists talk.
Yeah. And so shifting more to Trump Card, the movie makes a point to compare the modern day debate of socialism to the 19th century American debate over slavery. For those that have yet to see the movie, what exactly is that comparison there?
Well, socialism is a form of slavery, and you see this in all the great works on socialism. You know, Hayek called his book on socialism "The Road to Serfdom," and what he meant was that if you push socialism far enough, we'll all become serfs. Solzhenitsyn talks about the slavery aspect of socialism, how the Soviet Union became a network, a massive gulag or network of slave camps stretching across 5 different time zones. We see the same theme in Orwell. Socialism is a form of full control, Big Brother. Big Brother is ultimately a kind of plantation owner, except the main difference is it's not only blacks who live on the plantation, it's everybody. So socialism extends slavery to the whole population, and it's only the socialist ruling class who become, if you will, the elite rulers of the rest of us.
A minute ago, you alluded to the idea of how socialism has maybe evolved a little bit, or what the left refers to as socialism. You know, Bernie Sanders has been preaching socialism for a long, long time. How does what he preached maybe 30 or 40 years ago, how does that compare to the socialism that we're seeing today?
Bernie Sanders is an old socialist. He's from the sort of Rip Van Winkle era, if you will. He's been sort of asleep for 40 years. He's woken up. Wow, we got cell phones. You know, we got Uber. He looks a little dazed, if you notice, when you see him. But his is not the socialism that is popular today, really. Even though in some ways he's become the symbol of it. The new socialism is a marriage of classic socialism and identity politics. The new socialists, Ilhan Omar, AOC, they would never say things like bread lines are a good idea. That's Bernie. Their socialism is essentially they take the class divide and they accept that, but they add to it the race divide, blacks versus whites, the gender divide, men versus women, the sort of transgender divide, the divide between legals and illegals. So what they're doing is they're taking classic socialism and sort of integrating it into identity politics. And their goal ultimately is to divide society in like 8 different ways with the view of cobbling together a majority coalition of oppressed victim groups.
Do you think that's very interesting? Do you think the reason that what we see in the streets right now looks a lot more like Bolsheviks than it did maybe 10 or 20 years ago, do you think it's because Ilhan Omar and AOC and their ilk have been successful really in leveraging voting blocks and identity politics?
I think it is less because of Ilhan Omar and AOC and more because of the socialist professors in the universities who have been indoctrinating these students into the idea that they can be the new proletariat. They can be the instruments of revolution. And of course, these are absolutely pampered kids who have never been, their parents never gave them a good whooping. It was always just a timeout followed by cookies. And so these people think that they're going to get the same treatment if they go up against the cops. And so what's happened is that their professors have sort of egged them on, and the craziness of the campus is now spilling onto the street. You could almost say that academia is the theory and Antifa is the practice.
That's good.
Wow. So Trump Card does a great job of showing the ills of socialism, but also the strengths of Donald Trump. And I thought one of the comparisons you make in this movie, you also make it in Death of a Nation, that I found really compelling, was the comparison between Donald Trump and Abraham Lincoln. Explain that. How exactly are the two alike, and how did that idea come to you to compare the two?
Well, a lot of conservatives today are pining for the Reagan era. And in the Reagan era, we had a Cold War, but the Cold War was between us, you may say America, and the Soviet Union, a foreign adversary. We're now in a sort of cold civil war, which is a completely different thing. The threats we face are more internal than external. Now, as we show in Trump Card, there's a very strange Islamic connection here. There are Islamic radicals abroad who are involved in the American election process, using as a front people like Ilhan Omar. But by and large, this is a domestic battle. That's like the one Lincoln faced. Now, obviously, Trump and Lincoln are quite different in personality. Lincoln was sort of brooding and melancholy. Trump is sort of brash and out there. But I think at the end of the day, both Trump and Lincoln are moderate men who found themselves in a very immoderate situation. And that's what's so critical, because when Lincoln came to Washington, he realized the Democratic Party had become gangsterized. Just like today. I mean, who would think the Democratic Party would literally have its own paramilitary made up of Black Lives Matter and Antifa, in which gangsterism on the street would be seen as legitimate political action, quote, peaceful protests. Even though there's sort of arson and fires going on right behind you, you have these reporters with a straight face, mostly peaceful protest. Now, so Lincoln realized, and I think Trump does, that, this stuff has got to be stopped, and stopped right away. And it has to be fought with a new type of aggression, with different tactics than we Republicans are used to. We're normally the party of the namby-pambies, of the nice guys, of the people who turn the other cheek. And this has encouraged the aggression of the left, because they are very confident that if they knock down our monuments, we wouldn't dream of knocking down their monuments. If they unleash the deep state against us, when we come to power, we wouldn't dream of unleashing the deep state against them. But it's very important to hold them accountable and show them that these underhanded tactics do not pay.
I agree. And I wonder if you could speak on how that may manifest itself with Amy Coney Barrett. We know how divisive things were when President Trump nominated Kavanaugh. Things we think are going to get pretty divisive pretty quick. They're already beginning to. I mean, I've already saw a Politico article this morning talking about the cult she's involved in and how secretive it is and these things. How do you see this playing out with Amy Coney Barrett and identity politics and the incredible aggression of the left?
One has to deal very differently with people that you think are malevolent and gangsterish in their operations than with people that you think are sort of honest critics. And so let's take, for example, the role of the media. When the Kavanaugh thing first came, we felt we've got to give these accusers a respectful hearing. And you could see Republicans bending over backwards to sort of accommodate the process and so on. And of course, the whole thing was a big fraud. And how do you know it was a fraud? Because the moment Kavanaugh was seated, it all went away. What happened to all the ongoing investigations? What about all the facts that were supposed to come out? The left completely lost interest, and it was clear in retrospect that their sole goal was to keep this man off the court by any means necessary. So we've got to realize, well, we're on to this now. How stupid can we be? And so this time, we don't dignify all this stuff with attention. We don't even react. We don't go berserk, because a lot of times we try to appeal to the goodwill of the left. We say things like, you're covering Trump's tax returns. How come you aren't covering Biden's tax returns? In other words, we're appealing to some ideal of objectivity in the belief that behind that these guys, ultimately, there's a certain conscience, or there's a certain commitment to impartiality. There's a certain higher principle involved. Whereas really, there isn't. They don't believe in objectivity. They don't care that they're being one-sided. They see themselves as an extension of the political left and of the Democratic Party. So today, a lot of people we call reporters are no different than paid staffers for the DNC. So why do we treat them any differently?
Yeah, and going off on how we, meet the left on their own battlegrounds, you talk about at the end of Trump Card, this is one of my favorite moments of the film, very poignant, about Lincoln's order of retaliation. And you say that Trump is enacting his own order of retaliation. And for those who don't know, the Lincoln order of retaliation was put into place after the Confederacy decided that they would no longer take black Union soldiers in alive. And Lincoln basically said, for every Union soldier you guys kill, we are going to execute a Confederate soldier. So what is Trump's version of the order of retaliation?
Yeah, so at the first glance, the Lincoln order of retaliation seems very harsh. Why would a moderate man like Lincoln do that? Today it would be in the violation of the Geneva Convention and all kinds of treaties of war. But Lincoln saw it really simply. If you don't do to them what they're doing to you, they're never going to stop. And in fact, Lincoln's order was effective in that the Confederates did stop, and Lincoln withdrew the executive order. So what this teaches us is that when you have, for example, these Antifa gangs on the street, the solution is not a strongly worded op-ed calling for civility, because as long as these guys keep getting away with it, they'll keep doing it. Unless you stop them. Now, if a guy who's trying to pull down an Andrew Jackson statue, or let's say a Frederick Douglass statue, if he gets 5 years in prison, that word is going to get out to all his friends that this is actually not a very effective form of activism. And they're going to stop doing it. Sometimes force deployed up front ends up being a lesser use of force, because you don't have, because once you egg on the crowd and you've got many people involved, then it becomes much harder. You got to arrest more people. So I think ultimately stopping these things when they get started, rounding up the leaders, making an example of them, these are just very well-known ways to bring a riot to a rapid stop.
Then to move more to current events, after the Breonna Taylor case came out, the grand jury found that all the officers were justified in returning fire to her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, who had actually shot at them first. So the officers were found to not be guilty of murder. The left is now out in full force again. They're rioting, they're looting. What do you make of this situation, and do you think it helps Trump in November?
Well, I think it does, although there's a powerful media narrative to the contrary. Now, the narrative is sitting on a hypothetical example that apparently doesn't exist, which is the ordinary black guy just going about his business like he's going to school or he's going to work. Inexplicably, the cops all jump on him and start shooting him. That's sort of the narrative that's supposed to produce moral outrage, and it would if it actually occurred. But what's really interesting is that all these cases, George Floyd, home invader, Blake, a guy who's attacking his girlfriend and is in possession of a knife. Even in Breonna Taylor, the boyfriend shoots first and the cops shoot back. So the very fact that these are their heroes, these are the best cases that they can come up with, show you that the kind of case that relies that's behind all this propaganda, the sort of innocent black guy who gets for no reason whatever set upon by the cops, really that kind of case is extremely rare if it exists at all. And these narratives are of a very different situation. And I don't think that the American people, once they know the facts, once they can see the situation, even once you see all the George Floyd videos, your initial view of the matter begins to be at the very least somewhat qualified.
So, Dinesh, outside of new media, how do average Americans get access to counter narratives, or to, I guess, what we used to call facts?
Well, part of it is to reduce the power of the existing media in our minds. And that's, I saw this for the first time really with the Trump tax return story. Instead of being super indignant and jumping up and down, we just laugh it off. We just snicker. We just make jokes. We're bemused. We don't even take it seriously. I gave a commentary on the subject without reading either Trump's tax returns or the New York Times article. I don't need to. Because I know where these guys are coming from. So part of it is to recognize that we're not dealing with serious people. We don't have to actually do backward somersaults every time they come up with their latest bombshell. We just let the bomb go off and recognize that it has no power outside of our own mind. Now, the second point is, yes, I think we need to do better at narrative. There's a kind of conservative saying that facts don't care about your feelings. But see, the problem is a fact cannot refute a narrative. Why? Because a narrative is not a fact. A narrative is an interpretation of facts that tells a kind of story about America. And the left is really good at these narratives. We need counter narratives. We need to make them, and then we need to be able to sell them. And we need to convince the American people that our narratives, our counter narratives, are actually more valid. They contain more of the truth than what the other side is putting out.
And I think for anyone looking to see those counter narratives, Trump Card is a great place to start. So,
I agree.
I think it's my best movie. If you look at the first one on Obama, it looked like it was shot kind of on a high quality video camera from somebody's shoulder. I think the movies have just gotten better, more powerful, more emotional, more entertaining. And I think this one, in a sense, it's less historical than my earlier films, but that means it's more about now. It's more about what's going on. And so I think it's going to be very powerful. And today, because people are watching it at home, TrumpCardTheMovie.com is the website for it. The cool thing is that you can watch it on any device, big screen TV or computer, phone, whatever.
Yeah, the production quality is terrific. We appreciate the screener you guys let us take a look at. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I've got to say, just about Infidel, my wife and I finally broke quarantine and went to the movies. In fact, we had been waiting for the movies to reopen, and we saw the trailer for Infidel, and it looked like every bit the Hollywood blockbuster that it needs to be. It looked absolutely first rate, and I'm excited to see
D'Souza Media moving into that arena. It's going to be really neat to see what you guys come up with next. Are you working on anything? Is there anything in the pipeline?
Well, you know,
can
to
tell
be
us
honest,
about?
I've got a group of investors who would love to start a virtual studio and make a movie or two a year. I have to prove that I can make this model work in the market. And so it's tough because we're in the era of COVID. But if we can make movies like Infidel succeed, I think I'm, well proven on the documentary side. But if I can prove myself on the feature film side, that will enable us to really plant a flag in the Hollywood world and give them a run for their money.
Well, we wish you the best of luck in that. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us on WJ Live. We appreciate it, Dinesh D'Souza.
Hey, it's been my pleasure.
And we always appreciate Dinesh making time for us. Floyd, I know you said you also saw Trump Card and had a pretty strong reaction to it.
Well, I'm really excited about Trump Card first and foremost because we're going to be a part of the distribution of the movie. Because theaters are closed in many parts of the country, we're streaming it live at TrumpMovieNow.com. And that really excites me to be involved in that. But yes, I have seen it. I'm going to make a bold statement because I've seen all of Dinesh's movies. I've known Dinesh many years. I sent Dinesh an email immediately after seeing it, and I said, I think this is some of your most important work ever. I know it was a hard movie for him to finish because he had to finish it during the whole COVID thing, and they had to rewrite parts of it, and so it was a difficult movie. It was a hard movie for him to finish, but I think he really captures the ethos of what's going on in the country. And you're right, Josh. He understands, and I think better than most, because he grew up under socialism in India. He understands socialism, having grown up under it. And he understands how literally at the edge our country is, and how we have this unbelievably wonderful legacy of freedom and democracy and self-government and self-rule. And there's a chance it could be toppled by people who are just arrogant and selfish and greedy. And this election, it goes without saying, I believe is the most important election of at least my lifetime. Yeah. And the reason is because the entire country's at stake. And I think he captures this in the movie. He captures the gravity of the situation. He captures how close we are to socialism and how really Donald Trump is standing against all of the elites and fighting for us.
I love that he captures the idea that it doesn't have to be like that either. When you watch Dinesh's films, he does deal with the dark stuff that's going on with the left, but he also includes slices of Americana that really we haven't seen on screen in a very long time. The last time I really used the term Americana a lot was during the Tea Party protests years ago, because those looked like I lived in a small town at the time. You saw people coming together at the local bandstand and rallying, and that looks like America. And in Dinesh's films, he captures that as well and really provides a great sort of a choice for you. Which of these Americas do you want? Do you want the traditional America of freedom and opportunity, or do you want one that's dominated by riots in the streets?
And he
demands?
did something else that I thought was so important, was he basically pulls back the veil and ends the media cover-up of the corruption of our elites. For example, he does a whole section on the cocaine use of Barack Obama, and talks about, Barack, kind of exposes that seedy side of Barack Obama's life that nobody in the mainstream media still to this day won't talk about. And, these are corrupt people. Barack Obama is close to being a billionaire, a billionaire with a B. What has he ever done except basically suck off of the government? I mean, he was an organizer, and yet when he's done with the presidency, he is paid back by all of the elites. He got a $400 million deal from Netflix. This is obscene.
Right.
It's absolutely obscene. And the elites are taking us to the cleaners, and I think Dinesh captures that too. That's one of the reasons why I thought it was one of the most important movies he's done, is because he really tells the truth, and the truth isn't pretty, and he gets it out there. So if you're going to see one movie this year, just one, and you don't go to any movies, you got to see Trump Card, because Trump Card is going to really tell you why this election is so absolutely vital, and why everybody needs to vote, everybody needs to register, everybody needs to get out, because we could lose this country. Do people really understand? We could lose America, and it's just it's very, 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 very frightening.
So the film is Trump Card. You can see it today at TrumpMovieNow.com. Western Journal is proud to partner with Dinesh D'Souza and his folks to distribute this film, and it's an important film. You want to watch it. One other place you want to go before we sign off here is westernjournal.com/join. If you appreciate this show, if you appreciate the journalism that Western Journal brings you every day, I don't want to say hard-hitting journalism because everybody says that, but that's what we aim for. We aim
incisive.
We aim to bring you truth and insight that you're not going to see in the establishment media. You can help support that at westernjournal.com/join by becoming a subscriber. And you can help support us by coming back and watching us every Tuesday and Thursday, 2 p.m. Arizona Mountain Time, as we like to say around here, or 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We premiere on Facebook Live. You can catch us on YouTube, of course, and wherever you go to listen to podcasts, we'll be there as well. So we hope to see you again very soon. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, my name is Samantha Johnson, and I'm the Community Manager for the Western Journal. Thank you for watching today's episode of WJ Live. Make sure to let us know what you thought in the comments below. And while you're at it, share us with your friends so we can get the word out. WJ Live premieres on Facebook Live every Tuesday and Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. But you can watch anytime on westernjournal.com or on YouTube.